Hey everybody, welcome to Sex is Medicine. I am your host, Devi Ward Erickson. Delighted to be here with you yet again for another amazing episode where we discover tools and tips and insight and guidance to help us integrate our sexuality with our humanity. And experience more of our human potential in life through personal realization and spiritual growth, all of that in a mouthful. And yes, sex is just fun and amazing, but it is also a pathway to personal and spiritual realization. So we want to include all of that in our conversations about how we can use sex as medicine. I am delighted to have a wonderful guest here with us this evening, broadcasting coming in all the way from Florence, Italy. She's broadcasting from Florence. I'm still broadcasting from Canada. This is Raquel Schaefer, and she is a body confidence expert and success coach who teaches women how to heal their relationship with their body so they can reach their full potential in life. Her signature approach combines physical movement, which we love, resilience training, and spiritual principles to help clients let go of unwanted weight and eliminate addictive behaviors and more. Thank you so much for joining us this evening, Raquel.
Oh my God, I'm so excited. I'm a big fan, so I'm so excited to be on your show, on your episode. My pleasure.
Awesome. And so you normally, you were sharing with me before we tuned in, you normally reside between LA and New York.
Yeah.
You've been stuck in Florence, Italy, which is not the worst place to be stuck.
Well, yeah, I feel you, but it's actually not as romantic as it sounds. We're stuck in our home. We are in full lockdown. And I was sharing with you, Devi, a moment ago that this has been such an opportunity to tune in our bodies, right? I was listening to Glennon Doyle, and she was talking about how this whole pandemic, this all 2020 has been very much like snow globes. Like we're living in these snow globes all the time where the snow is making everything pretty and then the snow sets. Yeah. And we get to look at each other and we get to look at our lives and we get to tune in our body. And we're faced with this tremendous opportunity to either heal on a deeper level or escape, right? Yes. And so a lot of the work you do, of the healing work, of the using that pleasure and that body and that connection becomes either an opportunity to go deeper or to escape. Yes. And so for me, this year has been all about like constantly facing that, constantly making the choice of not just doing things, but why am I doing it? Yeah. What am I going with it? What it's really this whole thing about, right? So it's been very difficult, hard, but also extremely potent. So I'm very grateful at the same time.
Yeah. And I love how the focus that you're sharing about focusing on the body and moving more deeply into the body, because something that I've observed, and I'm sure other people have as well, that many traditional spiritual paths that are patriarchal are very much about avoiding the body, overcoming the body, suppressing the body, overriding the body. And something I've noticed in this work recently is that as there's this rise of the divine feminine consciousness, there's this conversation about coming back home to the body. How do we embrace the body? How do we live in the body comfortably and easily? And that is what your work focuses on. Is that correct?
Absolutely. And it's not just, it's not just in the spiritual work. If you think about it generally, the patriarchal culture wants us to believe that the body is this separate thing. Yeah. But our body is not an accessory we live at home, right? Our body comes with us when we parent. Our body comes with us when we apply for a loan, when we start a business, when we have that uncomfortable conversation, when we go vote for the president of the next 4 years.
Which I did.
Our body comes with us, right? And I think if our body came more, there wouldn't be so much division right there.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yes, I was reading your thing, like in your email, Devi has this beautiful email that comes out to her guests, and she shares how, I wrote it down. You have a quote from the Buddha.
Yes.
What is the quote? Okay. Your purpose in life is to find your purpose and give it all your heart and your soul to it, which is beautiful, right? Like our purpose is to find that. But how can we find that if we are disconnected from this vessel that is inhabiting our purpose? And that's the thing that drives me crazy about this industry, is that they think like this purpose is something that lives somewhere else, like on another planet. And the purpose is within, right? So we are talking about looking for this purpose. Is somebody's going to reveal it to us. This idea of freedom is somebody's going to give it to us. So pleasure is going to hand it to us. And it's really about tuning in. So that journey to find that purpose, that journey to really embodying it and fully live it is within. So that's what I love. I saw that email. I was like, oh, yes, I'm going to bring up that quote for her because I know her audience needs to know that this woman is for real, even in the emails that she sends out to her guests. It was so awesome. I really enjoyed it.
I love that. Thank you so much for that. And you recently published a book about this topic exactly, called Free Your Body, 7 Steps to Get the Freedom You Deserve and the Body You Desire. That's coming out like in 7 days.
Yeah. So
congratulations.
Thank you. This is such a huge accomplishment. Yeah. My book is 17th of November. And it's really about helping women see the body as a gateway to fast track your success in every area of your life. So really about tuning in, right? But mostly about shifting the approach. I come from a background in the fitness industry and that mentality that tells women how you have to fix your body. You have to force your body into becoming better, right? And the truth is that I believe that it's not one way or the other. It's not about renouncing to your desire to look good or to feel good in your body, but rather about allowing those results to become the natural byproducts of honoring yourself.
Wow.
If you would take this into the sex area, it would be about not just about wanting to have that orgasm, but why do you want to have it, right? So if you go into that sexual experience with the idea of really enhancing the pleasure, of healing, of connecting, then all the other good things could still come, but they wouldn't be necessarily the goal. That would be the natural byproduct of you choosing to honor yourself to that level, of you choosing to go that deep in your connection and your intention to connect. So my book is really teaching women how to look at their body weight as something that is not lost, but rather released. So imagine if there's anything in excess, right, that you can just drop it to become the most you, not the better you, the most you. And it's interesting because I told you I'm in Florence now, and one of the metaphor that one of the biggest sculptors of all time, Michelangelo, who is from my city, was from my city, he used to say to his pupil that he saw the angel in the stone, right? He saw the angel in the marble. And all he did was chop away the layer so that he could set her free. And that's very much how I want to invite women to look at their body. Yeah. Our best body, our more sensual body, our more connected body, our more fit, whatever best version of ourselves is already there, pre-existing. And all we have to do is eliminate this cover that we have acquired in our lifetime to set her free. And I believe the same is true with our sexuality and our freedom to express it. I believe we don't need to learn it. We need to undo it.
I love that. I love that. And that's also, you're speaking to something I think is a really important point, because that uncovering and that revealing may look different for every body, quite literally. Like in the West, we have this concept of thin and, like slender, and that means you're healthy. And yet I know for me in my life, the healthier I've become mentally and emotionally, the less neurotic I am about how my body looks. And my focus is more on health and wellness and feeling good, as opposed to being skinny. And I get the sense that that's what you're talking about too in your work. It's not just about being this Western ideal of this skinny person. It's about being in alignment and being healthy with yourself. And that may look like you wear a size 10 instead of a size 4. Is that a correct?
That is correct. That it's also the idea, though, that it's whatever it is that you desire, whatever that feels aligned, that is true to you, right? Because there is a difference between your desire to be a size 2 because society tells you, and there's a different feeling. It's about really tuning in into what feels good. Yeah. When people tell me, what is the difference between doing something with the right intention and the wrong intention, is understanding what it feels good. What it feels like it's aligned to align means to create an alliance, right? The actual original term of alliance, of align, is not even to put in a straight line. It means to create an agreement, an alliance. So when we are aligned, we feel this agreement with our essence. And so the body, the feeling of this body that you desire is like, what feels in alignment with you? What feels good? What feels natural? What is preventing you from fully being that? Because the body weight, including the heaviness in our weight, it's really a lot has to do with the emotional cover.
Yes.
Animal put on weights in the winter because the extra layer function as a form of protection from the hot weather.
Yes.
Our system, what we do when we activate our brain and we go in this fight or flight or freeze, we are so in the self-attack danger mode that we put on weight to cover that up as well. So the idea is, it's not so much about the weight. It's not about the size 10. Is that size 10 truly you, or is it a cover up?
Yeah.
Right? It's very individual. It's going in and understanding how to become more you and how to use that body relationship to fast track your understanding of who you are and your connection with yourself. Because if you suffer from body image, and many women do, if you suffer from food obsession, and many women do, because women actually, Devi, they think about food more than they think about sex, about 3 times more.
Wow.
Those are the data.
Wow.
So we obsess about what we should a lot. Think about all the precious time in these brilliant minds of women that could go towards fulfilling our dreams, towards elevating ourselves, that is going into, what am I going to eat for lunch? Right? That's insane.
Mm-hmm.
That is, it amounts to years of our lives. So the idea is not so much just what we do or what we don't do, is why we do it. And to be able to choose the one thing that we do to honor ourselves.
Yeah. And so the words that are coming to me as I'm hearing you talk is this sense of body literacy. So being able to attune to and read the messages and interpret the messages of the body correctly. And one of the reasons that we aren't able to do that is because of trauma. Because trauma, whether it's emotional, sexual, physical, whatever type of trauma, serves to disconnect us from the inner wisdom of our body. And I know that that is something that is, often spoken about in terms of body armor holding excess weight, is that can very often be symptomatic of a trauma response, of the need to protect ourselves from pain and harm and danger. And it sounds like that's what you're attuning to as well, or pointing to, is that we carry more than we need as a self-protective mechanism. And part of this journey is really tuning into the body and recognizing that that the reason that we needed to protect ourselves, the danger, the threat, is maybe no longer there. And that if we can attune to that and listen to that, then we can shed that trauma response. Is that accurate?
Absolutely, super accurate. And I think it's so important that you're talking. I heard other episodes of yours when you talk about trauma and you bring it up, because still to this day, there's this idea that trauma is only a few things, a few horrible things that happen to a few, which happen to be a lot, women. But in reality, trauma is pretty much anything that has created these responses in your nervous system that causes fear and reaction and triggers this shutdown, right? So it could be something, and this is what women really need to know. It could be something as simple or as tiny or insignificant as a teacher who responded terribly to you in school. It doesn't really matter, in the sense, not that it doesn't matter. What really creates the trauma is our response, our reaction to the event, not the quality of the event itself. So all of us, we are deeply traumatized this year alone.
Yes.
This year alone.
Yes.
We are going through a collective trauma.
Yes.
Collective trauma. And there's such an urgency to address that trauma. And that's why I always tell women, I don't want women to get over emotional eating because I want them to get rid of the weight. I don't care. I want women to overcome emotional eating because your emotional eating is covering up your true needs.
Yes, that's hugely important. Yes. And that reframe is so important. It's not about being skinny, right? It's about What is healthy and in alignment for me on an ongoing basis? What are constructive coping mechanisms for me to deal with and process and integrate my emotions in life? I wanted to drill into something else that you said a few moments ago, which is also that women, typically cisgender heterosexual women, as they're identified usually in studies, think about food 3 times more than sex. I believe that probably has to do with our culture, but what are your thoughts on that? Why would women think about food more than sex?
Well, because I think that sexuality is something that since we are very young, we have been trained to shut down.
Yes, amen.
And to feel ashamed and to not relate to or make it part of our normal capacity of entertaining thoughts in our head. And it shouldn't be, it's not right. So I think it's enormously cultural. I also think that food, it's so much everywhere and in such abundance, and there's this general impulse of shutting the emotion down. And so the chemical reaction that food, especially certain food, high processed food, sugar food, creates in the brain is very quick. And there is like this real like shutdown of emotion. When you look at MRI of people that are food addicts, food obsessed, it has a very similar MRI to people that do heroin.
Wow.
So it highlights the same part of so it's addiction, but it also shuts you down. Yeah. And we live in a culture that has not normalized discomfort. Yeah. So when we are feeling emotion, we want to shut them down. And now sexual experiences, especially the kind of sexual experiences we want to have, right? The real connection, the real deep healing experiences require you not to shut down, require you to open up, right? There's a lot more work there. Yeah. There is work. There is like, you need to take a chance. You need to be brave. Mm-hmm. You need to be open. And instead the food is right there, ready to shut you down, shut it down, stuff it up, and just go through the day. And it's the saddest thing for me is the feeling of speaking to women and say, I will work on it eventually. I will work on my sexual life eventually. I will work on my relationship with my body eventually, as if it's something that you can put on hold. And it's totally missing the fact that there is not, again, their body is not an accessory. That is your way, right? That is your energy. That's the way to reactivate your energy. That's the way to become and fulfill other areas. It's not, oh, let me focus on my sex life. So I can't do it now. Let me first build my career and let me first make sure my kids get to college. And then maybe then I'll worry about this. It's really at the core, at the foundation of womanhood, that ability to tune into your body and be present into every other area of your life. And we cannot put it on hold. There is this really strong urgency. I feel it right now. I feel it in my body every day. And it's what motivates me to wake up in the morning, is this idea that we need more good-hearted women to get out there and be present in their body and show up for our community and speak our truth and own our truth and not be worried about what the hell is going on in our head, the insecurity, the self-doubt. And unless we become really present in our body, we can't, because those negative thoughts, the self-doubt, that criticism, the comparison, it's always going to take over.
Yeah.
Always.
Yeah. And as you're speaking, what's coming to mind is this tendency or this habit in the Western culture to compartmentalize. So it's like, like you're talking about, I've got my career and I've got the this and the that, and it's all these little boxes, all these little compartments, as opposed to viewing ourselves as holistic beings as a whole, with the body as the foundation of that. And I absolutely agree that, like, I'll speak for my own journey, is that the more in alignment I have become with my spirituality, with my humanity, at the core of all of that has been the attunement and the presence and the deepening of my own experience and the embracing, I will say, of my own physical body. I was one of those people. I had so much body shame. Oh my God. I used to want to like cut pieces of my body off. Like it was really,
yeah,
it was really
girl, me too.
Yeah. And the signpost of healing, mental, emotional, spiritual healing, has been the ability to embrace my body, to not obsess about it, not obsess about my weight, not obsess about my size, and really just feel into what is appropriate for my body in this moment, what feels nourishing, what feels supportive right now. And so it sounds like that is exactly what you support other women in doing. So could you talk a little bit about your book that you've published and how that supports, guides women through this process of being able to attune to their body and reclaim their own inner wisdom?
Absolutely. So my book takes women through a 7-step method. It's a 7-step practical and spiritual method that takes women through 7 specific choices that allow them to get this really deeper and deeper understanding of how to tune into the body, but in a way that has a chapter and then an integration part of the book. So that is not just information, it's really to take it into their life, into their daily lives, and to build in this structure. So it's built in a way where the first 4 steps are about undoing a lot of the wrong that has been done, that it's about witnessing and creating this empty space that we can experience once we eliminate those limiting beliefs and all those memories that live in our nervous systems. And then it uses neuroscientists to reprogram the body and the brain to restore the body's self-regulating ability. So my goal with this new way of rewiring is never to have a woman that needs to have enough willpower to control herself, but rather a woman that is wired to only desire what truly serves her and satisfies her to the most. So it's really about shifting that approach.
I love that.
There's something else that I just need to say, because I was feeling it when you speak. I just felt you have such a presence. You have such a presence. And what I love about it, I've been really studying this when I say, what is it about women that makes them so sexy, so present, so hot, right? But hot in a good way, not just hot like physically. And I believe I was looking at women like Beyonce. I was looking like Olivia Pope when she enters on Scandal, right? What is it about them and their confidence? And I think that is the responsibility. I think responsibility is the sexiest attribute a woman could have, is that when they speak, you feel they're present in their body.
Yes.
They're not saying anything, right? When you talk about the use of sex as medicine, as something to really enlighten and fire up in us this desire to own our journey, you are fully dropped in, and I get chills and I feel it. And I want to know every woman who's listening that they too have that ability once they drop in their body. Now, I may have my journey to drop in the body that I describe in my 7 steps in my book, and Devi can have her own through the Tantra teaching and all of that. But the truth is that experience, when you see somebody and you feel like, oh my gosh, she's so powerful, she's so sexy, it's not really her size, it's not really her look, it's that presence. Yeah. When you see Beyonce walk on stage, like every step, she owns it. It's like every step she's saying, I'm here. I'm not JC's wife. I'm not, so-and-so daughter. I'm here. Listen up, right? There's that ownership that we so desperately need in women right now.
Yeah. Wow. Thank you.
So thank you for embodying that.
Amen.
Yeah, I love her. Yeah.
So something I want to drill down on that piqued my interest is you talk about self-regulation. What is that?
So when you have a baby, the baby knows how to self-regulate. Sometimes the baby will have more milk. Sometimes the baby would have less milk. We are born with the ability to regulate with food. We're also born with the ability to fully receive pleasure, which starts with food. Pleasure starts with food, the breast, the mother. So that sexual food is very, very much all integrated. Mm-hmm. So we are born with the ability to self-regulate. We're born knowing what is the difference between being thirsty and hungry. We are born knowing how to be satisfied. There's not such a thing as a baby that overeats. A baby will eat more during certain phase because it's just the natural instinct of the child to regulate because he or she needs it in the moment of the growth. Then we forget. Food becomes something else. It doesn't become anymore something that we use to satisfy ourselves. because we learn that even the concept of pleasure gets really twisted or shaky or not as clean. And then all our signs, the signs that our body can read, all of a sudden we can no longer read. Many of us will eat when we are thirsty.
Interesting.
Because thirst and hunger are experienced in the same part of the brain. And so most of us are dehydrated because we are not drinking that much water. We are drinking sodas or whatever. I mean, I don't, but you know, a lot of people do, and tea and coffee. And so we are dehydrated, but we read the thirst signal as hunger. So we will go and eat. Many times it's not just the thirst, is anger versus hunger. Sadness versus hunger. Fatigue is huge. It's huge in women. If you look at the studies on what fatigue, like for women, it's so hard to say, I'm tired. It's so much easier to say, I'm hungry. I'm tired. Let me just grab something to eat. So it numbs it down. It's almost, there is a shame because you're supposed to be this superwoman and who's a badass and work kick-ass career and is super mom and super wife and whatever, right? So the fatigue is interpreted as hunger, goes into the hunger channel. So when we're talking about restoring the body's self-regulating abilities, we're talking about going back and reclaiming what we know how to do by nature. Because again, it's like that angel in the sun, right? We're already there. We know how to self-regulate. We know how to love ourselves. We are all born confident, 100% of us. So it's not about, oh, come, let me teach you how to be confident. No. It's about returning to your truth.
Yes.
Returning to that ability that you were all born with.
Yes. I love that returning and that reclamation of what is already true. So we're not becoming something new. We're just returning to our source, ultimately returning to the inherent beauty and wisdom of the human form, which our society teaches us, you know, to disconnect from and ignore and override. So you talk about having body freedom. What does that mean? What does it mean to have body freedom?
Well, I believe that body freedom is the ability to be in your truth without allowing any negative pattern, emotion, or, you know, insecurity showing up as your most powerful self. So in other words, being free means being able to be you, being able to show up no matter what's going on, being able to feel enough and embody that enoughness in every single day of your life without waiting for one day in the future when you will acquire XYZ attributes so that you can finally give yourself permission to have the life and the experience that you deserve, right? So it's about being really present that your worth is your birthright, that you deserve to be satisfied, that you deserve to feel pleasure, that you deserve to feel good about yourself, and allowing all the other things that are pre-programmed in our brain that tells you, oh, no, you're too fat, you're too ugly, you're too old, you're too this, to just take a break and go in the back seat, right? And so they'll never be completely out, but they can be in the back seat and we are on a driver's seat and we're driving ourselves and our purpose towards whatever we are meant, you know, to arrive to the destination of our dreams. That's what I believe.
So being free of those, of what we call in nonviolent communication, those jackals, those nasty voices telling us that we're not good enough, that we'll never have what we want. And if we do have what we want, that we don't deserve to have what we want. So that's a dream. Like that is like,
actually, like, you know, I really do believe it's possible. It's not that they're never going to be there. Here's the big thing. It's not that they're not going to be there. Is that, again, they're going to be there, but they're going to be these whispers, right? In the back, like imagine, like I have kids. So imagine when I drive and my kids are in the back seat and sometimes they're chatting between, they're talking and they're in the soft voices. I can handle it. They're in the back, they're chatting. I'm like, I'm thinking, I'm playing my music, I'm doing my thing. When they start to get loud, I get really annoyed. Yeah. Like, mom's trying to think. This is my time, you know, just enough. So that's kind of like the feel that I have. It's not that these voices are going to disappear. We're human. This is a human experience. It's not because we're spirit having a human experience that we are not going to have the human experience. We are highly flawed and imperfect. So they're going to be there. But once they're there and you recognize them for what they are, they're separate. They're not driving your car. They're in the back seat.
And so how do we go about regulating these voices to the back seat? Because that's $1 million question, right? If I could snap my fingers and have all my insecurity dissolve overnight, that would be great. But how do we get back to that? How do we control the narrative? How do we reclaim control of the narrative of our own mind?
Well, absolutely. Like, so when it comes to the body and all this narrative about the body is about really becoming becoming an expert, identifying what they are, because as much as you think that they're many and infinite and very, very different, they're actually the same sort of narrative, the same thing you're replaying over and over again. So once you identify the theme and you identify the theme for what it is, that it's not you, it's something external that is independent from you, and you separate, you take that vision that is, okay, I am here and these are these thoughts that have belonged to me for a really long time, but I no longer want, then you have that clarity. And the book actually takes you through the steps of how you choose yourself over those thoughts. And you rewire your brain to do that to the point that it becomes an automatic response. So for example, if you now leave your house to go to your favorite restaurant, and let's say it's been your favorite restaurant for the last 5 years, you will not think where to turn right or left. You know what the restaurant is, right? You're just gonna drive there, park your car, and find yourself at the table. If you wanna switch the restaurants and say, this is no longer gonna be my favorite restaurant, I hated how they treated me, I'm gonna go to this other restaurant, which is on the other side of town. At the beginning, you'll get in your car and think like, okay, where is it? Let me take my navigation system, or I should turn here, I should turn there. You would actually have to do a little bit of work to get yourself into the restaurant. But eventually, if you go there all the time, you will get it in an automatic response. So when I'm calling you and say, hey girl, I'm in town, let's go eat. You're like, yeah, meet me here. And you just go and get to that table right away. So the idea is, when we want to switch a pattern, there is a phase in which we programming that takes a little bit of effort. It's nothing massive. It's nothing massive. In the book, I give 12 guidelines that together they work one with the other, that really help the woman work through them and establish and rewire that pattern. But at the beginning, you have this little bit of work to do. And then ultimately that too becomes an automatic response, so that you get to that place where you know exactly when the voices are coming. Oh, okay, that's that same thing. I'm choosing myself. I'm going for it. It's not affecting you in the same way, right? So having our relationship with our patterns, with our thought, it's almost like having a relationship with an old family member that at some point we really listened to, and now we're like, oh well, he's old, is there, is talking, but it's not a big deal anymore, right? And I wake up with those every single day. I wake up with those voices myself. I see my clients waking up with those voices. It's just, I've become such a pro recognizing them and say, thank you so much for sharing. I'm going for what I want. Thank you so much for sharing. I'm choosing to be present. I know the truth enough, and I want women to get to the place of knowing the truth enough so that when this thing comes around, it's easier to send them away, right? It's easier to say, okay, thank you. I got it, but I got stuff to do. This life is ticking and I got stuff to do. I got to own myself right now.
Yeah. So it sounds like what your work does is help women create new neural pathways. Totally. So it's a shift in focus. And that's exactly what we do in meditation. It's right. There's the thoughts, and then there's the point of focus.
It uses meditation as well.
Yeah.
I think what happened with a lot of my clients, and I'd say the vast majority of them, is that a lot of the extra weight actually drops off. It's what I call the side effect. The byproduct is that when you have a lot of this trapped emotion and you go through this healing process and you apply these guidelines, all of a sudden the body is almost, it releases. It's a release. It's not a weight loss. It's a weight release. It's a very different thing. Yeah, so the excess drops off. You're shedding off these layers. And as a result, I've had women that literally went through one of the steps, especially that is about self-forgiveness and releasing old, painful, traumatic events, that woke up lighter, like their clothing were huge on them from the night before. So there's a lot of that has been documented that I share in the book about how that happens. But I do believe that should not be the goal. There's nothing wrong with the body in a certain way. But if you have excess, it will drop off. It will.
Yeah. And I think that is so key, is like the goal, again, as we spoke about in the beginning, the goal isn't to become this Western ideal standard of beauty. It's to become attuned and alignment and healthy and whole and integrated. And what is not in alignment with that will naturally fall away. And that is such a different perspective, because we're very often taught that exercise is punishment. And and getting in shape is punishment. Like, I have to deny myself pleasure. I can't have that piece of chocolate cake. I can't do this thing. I can't do that other thing. And it's, instead of it being a punishment in the way of punishing myself, my body, my whatever, it's about, again, attuning and aligning to what my body is asking for and being able to read those messages correctly.
Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. That is the key.
Yeah.
I think it's so important.
Yeah. So how does our sexuality play into this? I mean, we touched upon it. We touched upon sexual repression since we were young, and, you know, how that helps block our ability to hear and listen to the body. So what have you seen for some of the people that you've worked with as they've come more into alignment with their truth, the truth of their own bodies? How has that affected their sexuality, or how has their sexuality impacted their ability to come into alignment?
Well, I think for once is that when you become more in tune in your body, you get curious about your sexuality. Yeah. It's like it's a reawakening of, okay, like really with your worth, with your sense of worth, because I believe that our ability to experience pleasure is very much connected with our sense of worth.
Yes. And oh my God, yes.
Completely shut down by shame, right? So the moment you release that guilt, the moment you release that fear, the moment you release all those voices that tell you why you should not deserve the life that you so desperately desire, then you are reawakening yourself to what you truly need. And sexuality is a need, is a natural need for women to experience. And I believe I've seen it. I witness it in my clients. I witness it in myself. I witnessing myself like becoming like really curious about, is that really all I can experience? And wanting to be curious mostly in the connection and the healing power of sexuality, right? Because again, when you start questioning the why you do something, so it's not about just, oh, I have a good sex life that you can, you know, have in a conversation and say. It is about, is that really all that is to it? What else is available to me? So the moment a woman feels worthy, the next question is, what is it available to me now? Yeah. And sexuality becomes a huge part. That's when it becomes a huge part, I think. Is I believe that our sexuality, our connection with our body for women is so crazy. I was watching this scene of The Matrix the other day that we're playing it. You know, the original Matrix, where there's Neo and there's Trinity, and they walk finally in the building. They're going to free Morpheus. So they walk through the building and they have a metal detector, and they put the bags, and then they open their jacket, and they're filled with guns. And I believe that for us, our sexuality, our connection with our body is like this greatest weapon. But we are out there looking for weapons somewhere. It's like, oh, I need to go to war. Let me look for weapons. And you got like all these guns under your coat. And that's what I feel it is for women. The sexuality and the connection with the body is our greatest power. It's our instrument to really find out where we are. It's our evolution instrument. It's our consciousness path. It's the gateway to become more us. It's the gateway to become more conscious and successful and connect. And then we are on the internet looking for connection on Instagram. You know, that's what's crazy to me. So the moment you are reawakening the body, that desire to receive, really to receive, it's huge, I think.
And that permission to it. And I often in my work talk about use the example of the relationship with food in comparison to the relationship with sex in this culture. So sex, you can't talk about it. Like you're not supposed to talk about, you'll get censored, but we can talk about food all day long, which is a normal, appetite, as is sex. We can talk about food all day long, but we can't talk about sex, and how in our society, it's if we had the same relationship to food that we do to sex, we would immediately recognize that as some type of dysfunction. Like if we had to eat in the closet, right? And we couldn't talk about what we just ate. We had to hide it and feel shameful about it. How that would be immediately recognized as dysfunctional. And I love the point that you've made. I'm going to bring it up again, that I think that because our natural hunger and appetite, sexual appetite, is so suppressed, the other appetite that's very similar to that is our food appetite. And that's very supported in this culture. We're allowed to want to eat, but we're, particularly as women, this is so huge. And I think this is maybe why women think about food more than sex, because we're allowed to want to eat. We're allowed to honor and acknowledge that hunger, but we're not allowed to want to fuck.
Yeah, totally. Right? There's a total disassociation there.
Yes. Yes.
And here's the thing. So much of that hunger is sexual hunger that is not addressed.
Yes.
And so they eat, right? I was telling this to somebody, I don't remember who, I think was one of my clients the other day. And it's like, well, isn't it amazing because she's so in love right now. She's in that phase of like really getting it on with this guy. And I was like, isn't it noticing how she's not hungry? I'm like, really? Of course they're not hungry, because you're fully satisfied. You're in this phase of like feeling yourself up, right? With the attention, with the love, with the connection.
Nourishment. It's nourishment.
Nourishment. And so you're not needing to go into that emotional eating. And that's the same thing I was saying before. The issue with emotional eating is not what it does, which is make you gain weight, is the fact that it's not making you address your needs.
Yes.
Right? And sexual needs for women are huge.
Yeah. And it's so important for us. I want to hear you say that again. Sexual needs for women are so important. Like they've been relegated.
I mean, it's like water or food or, the ability to socialize and connect. Like sexuality, it's part of who we are. We are born as sexual beings. It's not even that we become when we are a certain age. We're born with sexual energy, but it's severely denied. And you're right. Then you cannot talk about it. You cannot talk about it. But I'll tell you more. It's interesting because in similarities, certain kind of food disorder, you're not allowed to talk about it. There's a lot of shame happening with food.
Yes.
That's why there's a lot of closet eater. There's a lot of shame happening in food.
Yes.
And it's so much more than we know. When you work in this field and you start talking with people that look confident and amazing and they couldn't have a problem in the world, that they have a heart in front of somebody else. Because there is something about acknowledging, allowing somebody else to witness you pleasuring yourself.
Yeah.
So it's really, really deep how that trauma happens and how food is so much intertwined with our sexuality. As I said, the first pleasure a baby experiences is through the sexuality of being breastfed or bottle fed, but food is the first element of connection, right? There is this thing that when they're showing breastfeeding children without looking in the eye, there is a different element of how the food gets intake in the body of the baby. Our body is the first connection with ourselves, right? When you watch a baby coming out of the mom, the baby doesn't know where the baby ends and the world begins, right? There's no perimeter of the body. Then the body becomes the first perimeter. And then the breast or the milk and the eye connection becomes the first form of pleasure. So food, sex, it's so deeply connected. And I believe that when you heal your relationship to food and to your body, you then open up for your relationship with your sexuality, and vice versa. When you heal your sexuality, you are so much open to pleasure, and therefore food will become pleasure. So I can sit here and have a glass of wine with you, and that glass of wine, if I have that glass of wine because I want to connect to the pleasure, I want to connect to the experience, will be processed by my body in a different way than if I was sitting here and having the glass of wine because I was nervous and I wanted to get out of my head. The body will actually consume the calories in a different way. Our body is genius.
That is so huge. So what you're saying is that when we are consuming something based on self-love and self-connection and presence and this celebration, that it's metabolized differently in the body than if we're trying to just, if we're not being mindful at all, or particularly if we're just trying to stuff things down, if we're trying to not feel our feelings. That is so huge.
Because it just activates different part of our brains, right? There's a whole completely different method. But think about it. Isn't it the same with sex? Don't you think that if you're having an orgasm because you're deeply connected to the experience versus you are watching porn and trying to get it out as soon as possible, it's different?
Yes. Well, it definitely has a different charge. It definitely has different potency, and it definitely has a different, I always think of the terms of the energy body. It's not for the energy body. It's dispersing energy. It isn't building and cultivating and nourishing the energy.
Right. Yeah. So the same with food. It is dispersing energy, shutting down energy. It's not cultivating, nourishing, and filling you up. That's why food is never enough, because if you cannot receive and you cannot satisfy and you cannot receive pleasure, then there's no amount of food that's going to make you feel satisfied. And what happens if you're not satisfied? You're going to keep being hungry. And what happens if you keep being hungry? You keep eating, right? It's like all comes down to choosing to deserve to experience pleasure and to be here and to be present and to own our worth. It all comes down to that. No matter what you're looking at, it all comes out to that. But the relationship with food and the way we metabolize food and sex and pleasure, it's all one. I feel it is deeply related.
Wow.
And I'll tell you what, it is also related, I think, with our experience of abundance in general, financial abundance as well.
Yeah. Tell me more about that.
Yeah, I mean, that's the next book I think that I want to write. But because I believe like the connection between, I've noticed that I've started working with women. I also do a lot of business coaching. A lot of my coaching has been using the body. I call it body success, using the body to fast track your success in other areas of your life. And a lot of the women that I work with in the years that have been having a strong resistance to money and abundance and overflow of money had to do with a strong denial of pleasure.
Yes.
Right? With the inability to receive, because we live in this world that gives a lot of value to giving, give. But there's a lot of vulnerability, a lot of courage and bravery that comes with receiving, with allowing somebody else or something else or another force, another energy to have an impact in our lives. And so the same way for money to come in our life, we need to be available.
Yes.
Somehow, open, right? For that to come through.
And to feel worthy of receiving. I know that's been a huge thing for me in terms of resources and abundance is for most of my life, believing that I was not worthy of success, believing that I was not worthy of being supported. And so the healing, as I've healed my brain and my nervous system and my relationship to life itself, some of the very tangible external things that have resulted are an increase in resources, an increase in wealth and abundance. As my self-worth increased, my ability to experience things that are valuable has increased. So absolutely, the connection between money and
how do you
worth.
see it with that, the way that your ability to receive pleasure and the sexuality of pleasure, do you see that connection with abundance and money as well? Like as being connected?
I'll talk about in our tradition, our sexuality is related to the fire element. And the fire element is our ability to magnetize and attract, to manifest. So if your fire element energy is low or out of balance or muted in some way, your ability to magnetize and attract things into your life is going to be diminished. That's on the energy body level.
Yeah.
I will say for me, it's been more about as I've healed my genitals and as I've transformed my ability to fully receive all of the pleasure that's being offered to me by my partner, or all of the pleasure that I'm giving to myself, and just really be present in that. What's occurred is that my perception of what I'm worth and my value in the world has transformed incredibly. And then also being of tremendous service to the world with the work that I do. So my worth and value is bolstered because I'm being a very beneficial human being. And as a result of that sense of enhanced worth and value, everything in my external experience has changed to support that, so I can be of even more benefit, so I can be of even more service. And absolutely, I find that with my sexuality, digging in a little bit to my personal experience, I find that with my sexuality, when I'm not wanting to feel things, that's the one thing that I'll try to avoid. Is diving into cultivating my sexual pleasure, because every time I begin cultivating my sexual energy, emotions that I'm not wanting to feel will rise up to the surface. You have to go through them in order to get to the glory of orgasm. You have to be willing to pass through that. So if I'm trying to avoid feeling things in my life, I'll avoid cultivating my sexuality. That's where I know the situation.
That is really true. I can totally notice that in myself. I agree. And I see, but you see, the thing is, come back to this for me, is the idea that it's not different compartments. There's this idea that your finances, your abundance, your body, your sexuality, and it's just, it's really one thing. Yeah. Right. We're talking about different angle on one thing. And I believe the more we are bringing it together and begin to really pay attention to the body and start the healing process from the body, and that evolution and the attention and the focus and the presence, the more all these other elements come into place naturally.
And it's like that strikes at the core, the root of our teachings in this tradition, which is the body is Buddha. All wisdom, knowledge, and power is inherent in the human form, and you do not realize enlightenment without the body. The path to enlightenment is in and through the body, and that is a feminine teaching.
Love that.
Yeah. Yay. Awesome. Well, it has been such a pleasure to
connect
with you. How can people buy your book? How can they find out more about you, and how can they buy your book?
Okay, you can buy the book at www.feedyourbodybook.com, and you can find out all about me at RaquelSchafer.com. It's RaquelSchafir.com. And thank you so much.
Oh, awesome.
I just love being with you and having this conversation.
Yeah, it's been so enriching and enlivening, and we will have all of the amazing links to your offerings and your website underneath this video on YouTube and all the other places, our website, authentictantra.com, and make sure all of you subscribe to our podcast in Spotify. We're on Spotify, iTunes, TuneIn, all that stuff. And I want to give a shout out to my dog, Binny Yaka.
It was hard not to be distracted a little bit because he was having a little show behind you. But I did my best.
He's a new addition to the team, my co-host who just sits silently in the background giving us good vibes. Thank you so much, everybody. Have a beautiful, beautiful rest of the month. Many blessings and goodbye.